Aloha, everybody. My name is Shelby, and I am the Programs and Communications Coordinator at ikahi Mediation Center. Welcome to our Finding Solutions Growing Peace Brown Bag Lunch Series. Ikahi is a nonprofit community mediation center serving East Hawaii. We were founded in 1983 as a program of the island of Hawaii's YMCA, and in 2006, we became our own independent nonprofit. We empower people to come together, to talk and to listen, to explore options, and to find their own best solutions. To achieve this mission, we offer mediation, facilitation, and trainings just like this one to strengthen the ability of diverse individuals and groups to resolve interpersonal conflicts and community issues. Our Brown Bag Lunch series is held every third Thursday at 12 noon here on Zoom. You have to register on Eventbrite each time to receive that Zoom link. Some other exciting events we have coming up is, of course, next month, we'll have our next Brown Bag on July 16th. And this is with certified sociocracy trainer, Michelle Tsutsumi. And her talk is titled, Meetings That Feel Clear, Effective, and Gentle on Nervous Systems. So you can, of course, register for her talk through Eventbrite, and the link will be in the chat. Some other events coming up, our conflict prevention and resolution training series will be having another session on July 9th. And this will be with Anne-Marie Smoke and Owen Tamamoto. And their workshop is titled Respect in Our Workplaces, The Power of Stories. The investment is $50 with group discounts and needs-based scholarships available. It will be held at the University of Hilo, room UCB 127 from 8:30 to 12:30. And the link to register is also in the chat. On July 23rd, we'll be hosting a preview party to kick off the 2026 annual Orchid Show sale, preview sale in Hilo. So this fundraiser will be running from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. And the gala features a generous selection of fine wines, beers on tap, and other hard and soft beverages, wonderful catered food, live music, and orchid viewings and pre-sales. Ticket proceeds will benefit Ikahi Mediation Center's Cause of Peace, and the silent auction proceeds will benefit Hilo Orchid Society's Scholarship Fund. Tickets will be $115 and $40 of which is tax deductible, and it does include a souvenir wine or beer glass. And tickets are available online, but you can also get them at the Most Irresistible shop if you'd like to pick them up in person. The link will be in the chat. Our next basic mediation training will start on September 24th. This 3-day training is how our professionally trained volunteer mediators get their start. These fabulous folks donate their time to help community members communicate, negotiate, and resolve disputes. We're always looking for community members to learn conflict prevention and resolution skills, so please do consider joining our mediator apprenticeship program. Registration will close on September 18th, and we do have partial needs-based scholarships available. The link is in the chat as well. At the end of today's talk, you'll be asked to fill out a short online survey, which helps with our grant funding for this free series. So when I put that survey link in the chat, please just take a moment or two to give us your thoughts. And you'll also be sent an email tomorrow with the slides, the video link, and that survey link once more. So without further ado, let me introduce our topic. I know you are, but what am I? Managing conflict maturely when emotions are high. And our speaker is Miss Elizabeth Goueti. She has an MBA and is an experienced employment litigator and certified workplace coach. As a workplace strategist, she has partnered with organizations to manage extensive people strategy focused on strengthening productivity without costing peace. Goueti has coached underrepresented women on managing workplace negotiations through Courage in Corporate, quarterly group coaching, resulting in restored bonds with family and friends. Take it away, Elizabeth.
All right. Well, thank you so much. And good afternoon to all of you who are joining. I am so honored and elated that we are going to have a wonderful conversation. So I am going to share my screen here and we are going to get into this. One of the things that you will learn about me very quickly is that I enjoy a very comfortable, very casual conversation. And so please understand that this is not a lecture. I am not a professor at this point in my life. I was, but I'm not a professor at this point in my life. And my goal is to give you the information that you need. I completely understand from a housekeeping perspective that many of you are quite literally enjoying lunch. You may be off camera, you may be enjoying some delicious tiramisu because you've earned it, and that is great. If you want to turn your camera on, I welcome it. If you find that it's not going to work, I welcome that as well. But please understand that the goal of this is to have a conversation. This is not a lecture. What we're going to talk about today, as far as our flow is concerned, is number one, we're going to talk about our old patterns and the defaults. We have heard about fight, flight, et cetera, et cetera. We're going to talk about that as it relates to making sure that we are not insulting and making sure that we are raising the bar for ourselves when we find ourselves in the midst of conflict. Number one. Number two, I'm going to teach you a framework that I created back in 2019, way before AI was even a thing. Well, it was a thing, but way before we found ourselves relying on AI to do a lot of thinking. I'm going to teach you this framework and how this framework can show up for you, regardless of what you do, where you work, or how you move in life. I also want to address for those of you who are mediators what this could look like in the midst of mediation, and then we're going to have an open discussion. Please feel free again to interrupt and inject if you have a question for me. I welcome you to unmute yourself, or as Shelby said, use the raise hand function, and we'll take it from there. Uh, Shelby has already told you a little bit about myself. I'll make sure that this entire deck is available for you all, but just know that I am here to assist you, and I look forward to supporting you as an individual who recognizes that in order for us to flex our courage muscle, we have to get the information that we need. We have to make sure that we are fully aware of what is in front of us. And we have to make sure that we are exercising the options available in front of us so that we can do great things, not just for ourselves, but for the people that we serve in our communities. So, one phrase that I have said for a very long time is getting to peace isn't always peaceful. And what that basically means is that sometimes when you are in the midst of trying to get to peace in a situation, get to peace with a person, you may find that there's some clamoring. You may find that there are some loud noises being made. You may find that you internally, you're very uncomfortable. You don't like the way that things are moving. You would much prefer if there is an exit, a trap door somewhere for you to exit and use said trap door so that you can get away from it. When we are thinking about how we continue to show up in the midst of our individual conflict or supporting individuals who are in a dispute, for those of you who are mediators, you have to recognize very quickly getting to peace isn't always peaceful, and that is okay. There is a way that we can ensure that we are creating safety for ourselves and for the other individuals involved by recognizing that number one, as we deepen our anchor of communication, and number two, deepen the way that we move with ourselves and with each other, we will get to a place where we are executing with excellence. So we find ourselves regressing. You all have heard of fight, you have heard of flight, you have heard of freeze. Fawn and flop are two of the newer ones. I only have fawn here because my thought is that there isn't much flopping going on. But when you find yourself relaxing into your default mode, I want you to think throughout this presentation, I want you to think to yourself two things. What is my default? And what would I like my default to be? What is my current default? And I'm going to be very transparent with you. My natural default, based on the way that I grew up as a first generation American, is to flights or to freeze, but typically to flight and to run away. Of all of these options, none of these are very tempting, right? These are not these are the appetizers that I would pass on the menu. That said, because I understand how I have shown up as an individual who is a first generation American, an individual who is not taught the power of resolving conflict and managing conflict effectively, I've had to make great strides for myself, which is why I'm hoping to support you all in making great strides in how you show up when your default wants to show up and take space in your heart, in your mind, and in the room. So think to yourself, my default is fill in the blank. Some of you are fighters. You don't mind raising your voice. You don't mind arguing. You don't mind the finger pointing. Some of you may culturally be open to that. Some of you may regionally be open to that. As someone who's originally from the South, I'll say that fighting is something that we do quite well in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. We grow up actually finding a way to pick at each other and insult each other, even though it wasn't a default of mine. I saw it all the time. So what I gravitated to was, although I have a default of flight, I want to change my default to fight. That's what I said in my mind. I want to change my default to fight. I want to be the person who is not afraid. I want to be the person who's going to equally raise her voice and say, you know what, I disagree, and this is how I disagree. And in addition to that, and this was the error, this was my error, in addition to that, I found myself doing what was I mirrored what I saw other individuals doing, which was insulting, right? So you'll find yourself feeling a little better about the situation and better about yourself the moment that you say, hey, you know what? I don't like you and I think you're ugly. I don't like you. I think you're ugly and you're annoying. That does not serve you. That does not serve the situation. It does not serve us to move forward. And it definitely doesn't raise the bar on excellence as we continue to navigate life. So if you're thinking to yourself, these are different ways that we can show up. I want to compel you, I ask you gingerly and tenderly. I want to encourage you to think about what your default currently is and how you want your default to change against what is available in front of you on your screen. So we all understand what the cost is of unmanaged conflict. For those of us who are in relationships, we have heard of marriages falling apart. We have heard of friendships breaking up. We have heard of business deals going bad. We have heard of individuals in the workplace of productivity falling apart through and through. And we also know, and those of you who are attorneys or who work very closely with attorneys or who work with individuals who are in legal disputes, you also know that it is very costly from a legal perspective when there is unmanaged conflict. Unmanaged conflict often arises when there is poor communication, yes, but more specifically, where there is no clear outlet for this individual, which is why many people without a clear outlet will often default to insulting themselves, insulting the other individuals, and begin doing a number of things that makes them look, number one, immature, and number two, as though they are stuck in middle school. We want to get past that. So let's talk about a framework that I created some time ago called Pace Yourself. You want to pace yourself, which means you want to pause before reacting. You want to make sure that you're asking clarifying questions and ask for help as necessary, that you are committed to a resolution, even if, and we'll talk about this, even if the other individual that is involved isn't necessarily demonstrating or communicating a commitment to the resolution, you resolve within yourself that you will be committed to having a resolution going forward. And finally, you're going to engage equitably. Well, we'll get to equity in a second, but when it comes to equity, that essentially means you're giving people what they need in the moment, including yourself. That looks like you taking a moment, you pausing, and you going back to the P again, and you asking yourself, what is something that I could do that's different in this moment? So let's go through each letter. And again, if you have any questions or if you're in the middle of biting through a sandwich and you say, wait a minute, I have a question on that, feel free to unmute yourself or use the raise hand function. So P, we're going to pause. Often when we're experiencing some sort of difficulty, we feel it physically first, right? Some people may find their jaws tightening. Some people may find their chest tightening. I know for me, my heart begins to race. I feel very uncomfortable very quickly, and I'm like, I don't like this. This doesn't feel good. This makes me want to do what? Run away. Why? Because my default, which is something that I've had to learn to manage over the last couple of decades, is to flight. I want to get away. I feel literal tingles in my feet. I'm like, I gotta get out of here because if I don't get out of here, it's going to get ugly. And then someone's going to start name calling, and then there's going to be a battle royale. I want no parts of this. So you want to notice if there's any physical tension in your body or if there's some sort of a change. For those of you who are in the room who are certified mediators or you're in the process of going through that path, you want to pay attention to body cues and you also want to pay attention to how voices are elevated. Even if the voice is at a wonderful metronome speed of 82 beats per minute, and the person is suddenly speaking like this in order to calm themselves down, you can still notice changes in the words that they use, changes in how their body begins to tense up, the shoulders are lifting, changes in whether or not they find themselves physically moving away from the person or moving closer to the door. These are cues you should pick up. And it's so fascinating how even when in our minds we are not reacting in a certain way, our bodies tell a totally different story. Of course, if you are in the midst of a conflict, you want to breathe. Everyone is telling us to breathe, but it's tough because even while you're breathing, you find yourself wanting to do a number of things, again, depending on your default. And of course, 90-second rule. We want to make sure that we are giving ourselves 90 seconds. And again, if you don't have that much time, because 90 seconds feels like an eternity when you are in the midst of it feels like a very long time. But if you're in the midst of a conflict, and even if you can't give yourself a full 90 seconds, what you can say or what you can encourage individuals that are in the midst of a dispute before saying, hey, we're going to go ahead and just take a break. We're going to take a quick 15. You can say, both of you to different corners. Let's go ahead and take a 15-second. Although I am not a licensed therapist, neither am I wanting to be a therapist in this moment. What I need is for us to work together to move forward to a resolution. So we're going to take 15 seconds. I need you to breathe, pause, and let's keep going. Okay? We're going to start asking clarifying questions. Those of you who support individuals, I know you're excellent at this already. And sometimes we are excellent and really good at supporting other individuals more than we are at supporting ourselves when we find ourselves in the midst of a conflict, right? So begin asking those clarifying questions before making these assumptions. Start to if you are not good at clarifying questions, I always tell people you can begin with who, what, when, where. Never why, but how. Who, what, when, where, and how. You never want to ask why because why, people have different justifications. And when someone's justification does not match logically what you believe or does not match the value set that you personally have, a war begins, even if you don't intend to, a war within your heart, within your mind, or you may begin to verbalize your discontent or your disagreement, or you may unfortunately denigrate the individual if someone ends up saying something that you simply disagree with. So when you say who, what, when, where, and you break out that, why do you think that makes sense? Why is that okay in your mind? And when they say something and you begin to denigrate, you are then going to a default that results in an insult. We want to get away from that, right? So, of course, we're not filling in the blanks. We are assuming good intent as much as possible until proven wrong, and we are asking before we start to defend. When you really care about yourself, you begin to hold a bar for yourself that's much higher than other people, either you have held for yourself in the past or other people may expect from you. Whether you're dealing with family, whether you're dealing with an at-work situation, or you're an individual that's supporting said situation. When you hold a bar for yourself that is high and you work with integrity and you communicate with integrity, again, whether it's personal or whether it is a situation you're supporting with, you will find yourself behaving in a way that regardless of the outcome, you can say, you did a good job. This was good. It was uncomfortable. It was icky. I probably need to go for a really nice cone of ice cream. We'll go ahead and say that. We'll go for a nice cone of ice cream afterwards. But when you hold a high bar for yourself, again, you can move in a way that supports you in asking questions before you begin defending certain behaviors that do not align with your value. Okay. So when we're committing, and let me go back really quick as far as asking for help. When you are asking for clarifying questions, one of the things that I do whenever I'm in the midst of supporting a conflict with two or three individuals or going through some sort of corporate processing aspect, what I typically like to do is I will ask them, if you were in my shoes, how would you respond to what you just said? And of course, in that moment, if they're turned up and very hot, they're going to be like, well, I think it makes sense. No, seriously, I want us to take a minute and I want you to put yourself in my shoes. And I want to get a deeper understanding. I'm not saying you're wrong and I'm not trying to pull any mind tricks, but I really want to get a deeper understanding because this is an opportunity for me to learn. In you doing that, you are asking for help, even if you aren't necessarily saying, I need you to help me. Often individuals don't want to say things such as, I need you to help me, because they don't want to look weak in a moment. But there is nothing wrong with being genuine and being vulnerable in the midst of a conflict, or if you are helping and supporting a dispute. So when you ask for help, there's a way you can ask for help in the midst of you asking clarifying questions without you just putting it out there by saying, help me, if that is uncomfortable for you. If you're a person that is not afraid of that level of vulnerability, just go ahead and put it out there. We're in this conversation. We are not seeing eye to eye. I need your help here. I cannot do this by myself. I need your help so that we both can win. Because I believe that we both can be successful, even if this is uncomfortable. Are you open to helping me? Okay. Any questions thus far? Any thoughts? Any yes, no, maybe so's? Okay. We'll keep going. All right, so commit to resolution. So this is something that I believe is very challenging depending on what your default is. And in particular, if you have grown up in a community like I did, where insults, insults just roll off the tongue, right? When you are committed to a resolution again and holding a high bar for yourself, there are certain ways that you're going to move that is going to pluck up and uproot certain behaviors, such as insulting, calling out names, and doing things that we often see what I call as social media behavior. So what I need you all to do is ask yourself before social, for those of you who are old enough, if you were born in the 1900s, like I was, you remember what life was like before social media. We are now recognizing that social media often is moving many individuals in a way that creates a discord and creates a way of behaving that is not something that we've seen before. So I'll give you an example. Many people will have a conversation. They will say what they need to say in this conversation. And even if they are not physically moving their bodies, their mind has already checked out. It's as if they have swiped in the conversation. They have swiped up and they've continued. They have used TikTok as an example of how they are moving in real time and in real conversations. When you move in that way, whether TikTok is your platform or Instagram or anything else, when you move in a way where you simply drop a comment and you go to the next video and drop a comment and go to the next video, you are not committed to the resolution. You are not committed to resolving what could be a great thing, and even if it's an uncomfortable thing, and even if it doesn't result in what you intend for it to result in, you're showing a lack of commitment. So the goal here is to show that you are committed to the resolution, to communicate that you are committed to the resolution, because once you do that, it often will have people disarm and put the whatever the weapon is, put it down, right? When you demonstrate that you are not going to treat them as a stranger on social media, you will find that they begin to demonstrate certain behaviors in response that typically will be positive. So again, if you are in the room supporting a potential dispute or supporting, a potential resolution, what you want to do is you want to remind these individuals, we're not going to name call. And I know many of you have already done this. We're not going to name call. We're going to be professional. We're going to work this out. This is an opportunity for us to not just get along to go along, but actually to commit to the resolution. So what that's going to look like here is go ahead and remove what many people call social media brain. We're going to remove any aspect of which we would simply say what we need to say, commit it to being fact in our minds, and not even recognizing that there could be a different perspective in the room or multiple perspectives that are not aligned with where our position and not aligned with what we have shared thus far. Okay, so we want to make sure we are demonstrating commitment by staying in the room mentally, emotionally, physically, as much as possible, and encouraging the other person to do the same. You can do this by simply saying, I'm committed to resolving the fact that the dishes are always in the sink. As frustrating as it is for me, I'm sure it's frustrating for you as well. And we have to do something that's better. We have to make sure that we have a better go forward so that we don't have Mickey Mouse running around the house, because I noticed the other day there was a mouse. So I'm committed to this. Are you committed as well? When you do it in that way, people are a bit more open, sometimes very open, when you frame it in a way that supports you and supports the individual. Finally, while we are engaging in the midst of a battle, we are going to engage equitably, which many of you already have a deep understanding of what equity looks like. And equity essentially is giving people what they need in that moment. What you need in that moment may be very different from what that person needs in a moment. But if you ensure that you're committed to the resolution, you are communicating in a way that engages them, engages their needs, engages what they may be missing. And often people who are in the midst of a conflict, and for those of you who are, again, mediators, you know this very well. Often, when people are in the midst of a conflict, there is a need that is not met. And because there is a need that's not met, they are responding in a way that they need to be seen and they need to have certainty. Tony Tony Robbins, as many of you all know, he's a prolific speaker. He's probably a billionaire, and he's an individual that goes around and talks to many individuals about launching businesses and doing great things, quite brilliant in his own regard. One of the things that he talks about very often is the fact that certainty is a natural human need. And when there is a lack of certainty, people begin to behave and respond in a way that is often lackluster and often below what I would say the bar that they are trying to raise for themselves, for their community, for their families, etc. When you engage with someone and give the individual, including yourself, what you need in that moment, it does a number of things. It creates safety for you. It creates safety for them. By default, it creates safety for them. Therefore, because it creates safety for them, they're going to behave in a different way. They're going to respond to you in a different way. And as a result of them behaving more positively in the situation, that is therefore going to create safety for you. So it's a little bit of Jedi mind tricking, but you have to engage equitably to support them and to support yourself. If you are thinking, well, this doesn't feel fair, it doesn't feel fair that I have to support them and then support me, or support me in order to get support to support them. That is how we drive better community behaviors. That is how we ensure that people are showing up in a way that creates the right patterns of behavior that will actually get us in the long run to where we need to be. And finally, that is how when you continue to raise the bar for yourself by supporting other individuals and therefore supporting yourself as a result, you will continue to raise the bar because after a while it becomes natural. You begin to move in a way that just feels so, it enamors you and it enamors your behaviors in a way that people say, I really enjoy engaging with fill in the blank, right? You can say, I love engaging with Shelby because when I engage with Shelby, I know she's going to be fair. I know that I'm going to walk away, that even if I don't agree with her, I won't feel less than. I recognize that when I engage with Shelby, or if there's a Tom in the room, let's call you Tom. I know that when I engage with Tom, that I will not feel less than. You probably won't be even able to articulate it, right? But there is a need that is met. We all want to be seen. We all have that need as human beings. We all want to be seen, and therefore you engaging equitably with that individual and with yourself allows you to see them and for them to see you. Okay, any questions? Questions, preguntas, thoughts, comments? Nothing yet. Okay. All right, so let's talk about managing the insults in the room. So again, I love a good pause. We're going to pause the room and we're going to name what just happened. You're going to see, let me fast forward really quick to this and we'll get back to it. So here's the PACE framework in action, the reflex. He is always trying to make me look bad, and that's the reason why he's balding. I don't like him. He's always trying. These insults come up because we want to make ourselves feel better and we want to make sure that the individual, especially if they're expressed out loud, that the individual feels bad about him or herself. So for those of you who are mediators in the room, the moment that you hear an insult, backhanded compliment, the moment that you hear something, a sarcasm, we don't do sarcasm. I let people know all the time when I'm in the midst of supporting a conflict. I don't do sarcasm. Sarcasm is an angry person's way of expression. This is not about anger. If you want to be sarcastic, I invite you to work with someone that will support you from a psychological or a therapeutical perspective. This is not a room for therapy. This is not a therapeutical space. This is a space where we are getting to resolution as closely as possible. If you make an insult, I will call the insult out. So if you hear it, call it out. Pause it, do as comfortably as possible and as neutrally as possible. You can say, please don't do that anymore. Let's keep moving, right? If necessary, reframe the insult into a need underneath it. As I just mentioned, I highlighted that, and we're going to keep moving the conversation forward. If you find that people are slamming their hands, and I've seen this, I'll tell you, let me give you an actual example, and Shelby, keep me honest on time. I want to respect everyone's time. Real life example. I was in the midst of supporting a client, and the client was in a dispute. He owned commercial property. He was in a dispute with a buyer of said commercial property. Now, he was my client, and so I was there to support him. Very quickly, and by very quickly, I mean within 12 minutes of us getting into the room, I recognized this was not going to result in what anybody wants, and everybody's going to fight. So within about 12, 15 minutes, I had to pause the room because the insults started. They started hurling insults, and I was like, oh my goodness, this is a lot. I paused the room, I called it out. I said, do not disrespect your time. Do not disrespect my time. We're here to talk about this. Let's go back. I found immediately, instead of advocating for my client, I became a mediator in that situation. It got so bad, the individuals, the men involved were yelling and threatening. It got so bad that I had to almost lay across. I had to literally put my body halfway across the table and say, stop this. Everybody stop. You go in that corner and you walk out of the room. We're not going to start over again. Everybody walk away. I had to literally do this. And I realized in the moment that a number of things were happening, but what I could have done, and this was an error on my end, what I could have done is ask more proactively, what is the need that's not being met for you? Why do you find yourself, yes, the situation's very hot and it's going to cost you thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars, but because we want to avoid the cha-ching, what are the things that you need in order to effectively move forward? Now, again, my goal was to advocate for the person that hired me. However, we really needed the individuals to see each other. Fast forward, they walk out of the room. Well, one goes to one corner, one walks out of the room. I talk to the one that's in the corner, that's my client. I talk to my client and I say to my client, what needs to be done here that is going to ensure that you do not behave like you're in the seventh grade? What can we do? We had a good conversation. I did not bring them back into the room. However, we continued the conversation telephonically. This was way back in the day, way before Zoom was even a thing. We continued the conversation telephonically, and guess what? They became best buddies. Why? Because eventually I got to the point of recognizing there is a need that's not met. They are insulting each other. Number one, because their EQ is their emotional intelligence is very low, perhaps. And number two, they are so committed to their positions that they cannot disassociate and disconnect in a way that will move them forward. They want to punch and insult and call each other everything but one who is loved, is what I'll say, right? So if you find yourself in that situation, and I'm sure some of you may have in the past or you may in the future, you want to take a moment and ask yourself, are there some social media behaviors happening? What are the needs that need to be met? If there is an insult that is hurled across, how can I manage this more effectively to ensure that it either doesn't happen again or that they have an understanding that I, as an individual, I also have a need and I don't want to feel disrespected as a professional who is trying to support both of them, right? As a mediator, many of you may be thinking to yourself, these individuals are fighting, and to be candid, you don't have a nickel in that dime. But even if that is the case, your goal is to ensure that perhaps they're not walking out arm in arm, but that something is met. Even if we end at an impasse, we can end at an impasse with respect. And finally, of course, please take care of yourself. This is something that I say to the individuals that I'm supporting in the room from a mediation perspective, number one. And this is something that I have to practice myself. I have to take care of myself. And that looks like me going to get ice cream, therefore, because it's the right thing to do. I go and treat myself to some ice cream, but whatever is happening for you, whatever good looks like for you, however you need to feel, if you need to practice a conversation, if you need to have a hug with someone, if you need to take a moment and journal, even in the midst of your lunch, you're going to have lunch and you're going to journal and say, that was wild. This was crazy, but I'm so proud of myself for upholding a high bar. Recognize the good things that you've done, recognize the good work that you are doing, recognize that you have a powerful voice, even if you are the person that's in the midst of trying to support individuals and speaking up as well. And recognize that the work that you are doing is deeply valued, even if people do not speak on that. Okay. Even if people don't say thank you so much, you recognize, you know what? Tom, you did a good job. Shelby, you did a good job. This was excellent. It was crazy, but you didn't lose your marbles. Even if you fully deserve to lose your marbles in that moment, you didn't lose your marbles. Good job. This feels good. Okay. Any questions thus far? Any thoughts, comments? Okay, so here's the PACE framework in action with family. So here's a scenario. Your sibling cancels family plans for the third time with no explanation, and you're ready to call them out because you're sick and tired of it. Your reflex is, of course, you bailed again. You clearly don't care about this family, right? Your reflex is this individual does it all the time. He or she always makes everything about themselves. And guess what? You may be right, right? Even if you cannot diagnose them because you're not a clinician, there could be some truth there. But instead of you leaning into that truth and making yourself more upset, working yourself up into a lather, the PACE response is, I want to understand what's going on before I assume the worst. Can we talk about what's actually getting in the way and why family plans are constantly being canceled? Because if there's something I need to know, I would love to have a deeper understanding, right? This is us pausing, asking questions, being committed, and being equitable. The equity here looks like you actually having a conversation. Sometimes individuals who do certain things that we may deem just idiotic or stupid, they need to have a conversation, a very real and very honest conversation without finger pointing or blaming. Okay, so we want to make sure that we pace ourselves and we have a pace response for them as well. At work, I shared this earlier, your coworker failed to copy you in on an important email to leadership. Once, twice, thrice matters not. Instead of you saying he is always trying to make me look bad, that's why he's balding, or trying to give him some retribution or being vindictive and doing the same thing, those behaviors will not further you along from a character perspective. They don't further the relationship, even if the relationship is super high level or it has very little depth. And that type of behavior, or you insulting the individual or behaving in an insulting way, doesn't actually give you the results of you in the future meeting this same type of behavior or same type of character to give you a better framework for yourself. Right? So, what we're going to say, hey, Tom, I love the name Tom, obviously. Hey, Tom, I heard about the meeting and I'm curious what ideas you have to make sure that this doesn't happen again. Ask me how I know about this because this has happened to me where I worked with an individual. I had a number of ideas. She took my ideas. She presented my ideas to leadership. I found out about it 2 weeks later when someone said, hey, you weren't in the meeting when, so let's call her Lisa. You weren't in the meeting when Lisa presented this amazing program that's going to support the organization and our leaders loved it. And I was like, wait a minute, tell me about the program. She tells me about the program. This was not gossip. I was just asking questions. She tells me about the program. It's the program that I created from scratch. This was back in 2014. I was livid. I was livid. But instead of insulting Lisa, in the moment, I pulled Lisa to the side and I asked her some questions, and I had to pace myself because I recognized that I had the ability to create a framework for myself because I knew that that behavior of my work being stolen, me not getting the recognition that I completely deserved would happen again. And ladies and gentlemen, it did happen again in another company that I worked for. Okay, so here are some key takeaways. Let's do a quick recap and then we're going to open the floor and have a conversation. So remember, your reflex and conflict, fight, flight, freeze, or fawn is automatic. This is automatic and we all have a default. Our defaults need to be managed. While these are not character flaws, we need to make sure that we're catching it. When we pause and ask questions or ask for help, when we commit to the resolution and engage equitably, when we pace ourselves, we have to make sure that we're pacing ourselves through and through. If you're having a 30-minute conversation, a 20-minute conversation, a 5-minute conversation, this conversation could be an hour. Pace yourself. Remember, getting to peace isn't always peaceful. What that means is sometimes you have to put your emotions on the back burner and bring them forth. Sometimes you have to manage them in the moment. Sometimes you have to make sure that as much as you feel like insulting the individual, insulting them gets you nowhere. It gets you nowhere in the situation. It gets you nowhere with the person, and it gets you nowhere for your future self. You never want your future self to end up becoming a wallflower and not saying anything because your default is to fight and to insult. An individual, whether you are working with others or working to support others, if you find yourself being a wallflower to insults to you or insults to the other individuals in the room, it will not work because it will change quite literally your brain, and you are telling your brain, this is how we always show up in these sorts of situations. We always give a good giggle every single time someone wants to point out something that some person in politics said. We're always going to fold our arms and sit back whenever someone says something that is deeply uncomfortable. We are always going to hit below the belt because hitting below the belt feels good and it's an action that we can take. These are defaults that we must change in order to move forward effectively. Okay, so now we're going to have a light discussion. If any of you feel comfortable, I would love for you to unmute yourself and I would love to hear from you. So, what's your default reflex when it comes to a conflict that is uncomfortable, whether you are or are not a mediator? Fight, flight, freeze, fawn. I don't have flop on here, but what is your default? I would love to hear from you all. Number one, what the default is. Number two, why you think that is your default. Number three, where did you learn that from? Who did you learn it from? I see there's a Tiffany De La Cruz.
Hi, aloha. Thank you for this today, but I'll go first
Sure.
because I'm in my older age and I feel like I learned a lot in my long life. I used to be someone that would just take insults and just brush it off. But now in my older age, as a parent of three grown adults, I've learned to address it, basically do what you have been telling us this whole workshop. So I'm able to have that conversation when I feel that someone is trying to be derogatory. And
Mm,
yeah, and I mean, I'll do it depending on their personality. So if they're kind of a straight up person, I can be straight up with them. And if not, then I'm a little more subtle about how I address it. But I have learned in my experience to address it. If I am put into an uncomfortable situation, then I mean that's not okay. And so I guess my reflex would be to not really fight, but I don't know what a better word would be, maybe mediate or at least talk it out.
yeah.
Versus pausing or asking them to change the outcome in a recent conflict. Um, I've also gotten better with,
Let me
oh
pause
yeah,
you
go
really
ahead.
quick. Yeah, let me pause you. First, I want to say thank you for flexing your courage muscle. Thank you for showing up for yourself in a way that you will be proud of. And thank you for recognizing that individuals that are insulting to you, regardless of what is happening in the situation, is not okay. And you no longer allow that. You are demonstrating to yourself, to your community, to your three amazing children that there's a certain standard that you have for yourself, and therefore there's a certain standard that they should have for themselves. So, number one, congratulate yourself. And number two, we often find as we get older and as we mature and as we start to experience different things that we need different things from for ourselves and from other individuals. So I'm so elated to hear that you no longer allow people to insult you. What I would love for you to do, and this is something yet you can do on your own and other individuals as well, what I would love for you to do as an exercise is ask yourself, why is it that I allowed said behaviors to happen in the past? What was the trigger that changed it for me? And how do I make sure that I never default and go back to where I was when it didn't work for me? That's all I
Yeah,
wanted to say.
oh, thank you. Well, just so you know, I feel like the trigger for me to snap out of it was being a mom. When I gave birth to my son, that's when I realized that I need to have a backbone and I need to be that,
Mm,
that example that I want my kids to be because I didn't want them to grow up and be bullied themselves. So I wanted to set that example. So that was a trigger for me. It's just being a mom and knowing what I wanted my kids to be able to do as adults or in their life. But it took me
so
40,
good.
took me a while to get there, but I'm here.
Yeah,
Um, where could
so good.
pausing or asking have changed the outcome? I I'm a little better about pausing. Sometimes things slip out of my mouth faster than they should, but I'm a little better with pausing. But it does help to stop and think before reacting. Very helpful. And then one relationship you'd like to try pace this week. I don't know. I mean, I guess it's mostly just random, road rage, stuff like that. That I would probably I don't know how it is where you guys are, but we have some stupid drivers here in Hilo, so
Oh, wow. Okay. Well, I'm in DC. Okay. So here in DC, I'll tell you this really quick and then I'll call on Candace because I see her
okay.
hand is raised. Here in DC, people drive, it's wild. Let me just say that. Number one. Number two, I have a family member that whenever I'm in the car with her and someone drives crazy, she will not just honk the horn, she'll say, and that's the reason why your bumper is gonna fall off next week. Like she just starts to go off. And when she's done on her rant, I'm always in the passenger seat. So I look to her and I say, do you feel better about yourself? Do you think? And she's like, no, I don't feel better about myself. And I'm like, so again, why would you even go through that? Because it doesn't help. So thank you so much for sharing. Candace, go for it.
Aloha. Thank you so much for this offering. And I just find your way of teaching or not lecturing to be very refreshing. So thanks.
Oh, thank you.
My default is definitely fight. And I've been thinking about it in the last couple of minutes. I think it's fight because I grew up in a house where people just avoided conflict and talking about hard feelings. And age, but without tools, I think my nervous system decided for me that fight at least gave me the opportunity to be seen and heard authentically in a way.
Mm,
Like I was still able to voice what I was saying, even if I was saying it in a non-constructive or sometimes hurtful way. Um, it always felt better to me than running away or just not dealing or being fake in order to
mm.
gloss over conflict. Yeah.
That is so good.
I
And
don't,
it's powerful that you've called out the fact that because of this environment, you as a mechanism of survival or as a mechanism of being heard, as a mechanism of ensuring that you had a voice as well, you did this. Right? It's powerful to recognize that because often, again, people behave in a way that they behave, which eventually becomes a default over time through patterns because there's not a need that's met. So what is your
yeah,
default now?
that's right. Well, my default now is to try to use some tools. I'm not a mediator, but I have a lot of tools in my toolkit that I
Mm,
utilize. But I also find that it's really dependent for me on the people with whom I'm in conflict. And some people are much
sure.
easier to talk with about things, and others, it depends on what tools are in their toolkit, yeah? And I'm
Yes.
not quite yet at the most empowered place where I can be like, well, no matter what is happening in this situation, I show up consistently in the same way. I still get snagged in different ways. Um,
No, I
yeah.
I think that's very honest and very real because there are times where you're dealing with, and I'll say this as someone who has negotiated contracts and I've, managed conflict and, I'm certified in executive negotiations and conflict resolution, all the things. There are certain audiences and certain people that no matter how put together you are, no matter how put together your words are, they will begin to behave in a way that is intentional to undermine you, to attack you, and to put you in a position that you cannot be your best, or to put you in a position that they may not even realize they're doing this, but to put you in a position where you look back and you're like, oh, that was ugly. I did not want to have to call you XYZ, right? And so, because that is a reality, because there are people that unfortunately, based on how they grew up, or based on, as you said, their lack of, or their toolkit, et cetera, because that exists and that population exists, what you should do, what you should consider doing, I don't want to tell you what you should do because you're a whole grown adult, but something for consideration is say to yourself, there's a certain type of personality or behavior that if I see this behavior, this is how I'm going to behave. You prep yourself mentally and emotionally so that when this person shows up, because they will show up one way or another, it could be next week, could be tomorrow, could be in a year. When this person shows up and they are attacking you because of your value, because of your belief, because of how you carry yourself, whatever, you have to prepare yourself. This is how I'm going to carry myself. This is someone that, as much as I want to engage with them, I may have to disengage, and I'm okay with that. I'm okay with
Hmm.
walking away, and me walking away is not flight. Me walking away is taking care of myself, giving myself what I need in that situation. And that's okay.
Yeah, thank you so much for saying that last part in particular, that me walking away isn't a flight thing. It's from an empowered place of like, I'm going to honor myself. I'm going to honor my needs and remove myself consciously from the situation.
Yes.
And just one more thing is like, this comes up the most, unfortunately, with my family members. And I find that, none of them, as far as I know, are taking, brown bag conflict series, chats. So trying to show up differently in a situation where there's certain rules set, and then I go in and I'm almost perceived as like a troublemaker for wanting to do better, if you know what I
Yeah.
mean. So
Yeah.
it's really hard. It's really, yeah, it's challenging. But
Yeah.
thank you for your feedback.
Yeah, absolutely. When it comes to family, one of the things that it hurts because we didn't select them. And so sometimes we feel as though we are forced to be in relationship with them, and we don't necessarily appreciate how we're being treated. And when you call that out, especially in certain family dynamics, you are seen as a troublemaker because you are the one that's rocking the boat. The boat has already been rocked. The boat has holes in it. Y'all are sinking, right? And what you're saying is we need some life vests. We might want to get to the shore as quickly as possible so that we don't die. And often people don't want that. They don't want to get out of the boat because the boat is the only thing that they know. So there are circumstances, unfortunately, where you have to get out of that boat, swim to shore so that you can survive.
Yeah, thank you so much.
No,
Really
thank
appreciate
you.
that.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you. Let me just go to the last slide here. So I would love to stay in connection with you all if you will have it. So a couple of resources for you. So number one, I have a podcast. It's an old podcast. It's an old podcast. I have not worked on it in a couple of years, but for women in particular, I address conflict resolution, what that looks like, etc. I am getting ready to launch a Substack newsletter. I'm already on Substack, so if that's helpful for you and you want some of this in writing, Workplace in Motion is the name of the Substack as well. And I am on social media. You can get in contact with me. I'm on all the social medias. Okay, I have a good time, and I hope you have a good time with me. But feel free to give me a follow. Feel free to shoot me a message. Would love to stay connected with you all and continue to support your journey as much as possible. And that is it. I will stop sharing and I will pass this to Shelby. I'm yielding to you, Shelby.
Oh my goodness, Elizabeth, that was amazing. Your slides were incredible. You are such a natural teacher. I'm sure I can have everyone join me in thanking Elizabeth for such a wonderful presentation. Um, I think this PACE method that you've shared is just phenomenal, and you've broken down these big concepts into really easily digestible chunks that everyone can remember. So are there any last minute questions before we close? Anything else you'd like to share or ask Elizabeth?
Don't be shy. Now's the
Don't be
time.
shy. All right, everyone. Well, that was amazing. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for coming today. And as a reminder, please just take a few minutes to fill out our short online survey, which helps with our grant funding for this free series. So I will go on ahead and put that link there in the chat. And be sure to check your email tomorrow for the wonderful slides Elizabeth has provided, as well as the video link if you would like to watch a rerun of today's session, and that survey link once more. So mahalo for coming. Thank you, Elizabeth, and we'll see you all next month. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.